Okay, so now you're probably wondering, okay, what does this have to do with megakaryocytes and chromosome duplication? Well, let's do a little story time using an analogy. So pretend this is you. You are bright and full of ideas, and to make a little money and help pay off those loans like that all of us have, you decide to get into the mask making business, but you're like, I don't know how to make a mask. So you end up buying a book. It's kind of an older book, and then your other friends, they come along and say, hey, I want in on the business too. So you're like, oh, I only have one book, so how can I get them in to help me make these masks? Maybe I'll make copies of the information in the original book and then distribute it to them. And your friends that are willing to help you with your new business, they have all the information and they make their masks. And then they're like, wow, they're producing a lot of masks, right? And you're like, wait, is there a way I can increase the production? So then you talk to more of your friends, and more of your friends hear about the success you've had in your business, and even your grandma wants in on it. And you're like, wait, I only have one book, and I can only distribute so many instructions at once. Is there a way that I can improve things? So you think about your original workflow. You have your original book that has information containing how to make these masks, right? And then you make copies of that information, and then you distribute it widely. And then once they got to the people who sold the masks, they made the masks, your final product. So you had your original information, you copied the instructions from the original information, and you made your final product. Now, you're thinking like, okay, how can I make it so I can increase the amount of my final product? Maybe I'm going to have more books, more of the original information. If I have more of these books, I can distribute it elsewhere and have other people make more copies of the information. If I have more copies of the information, I can potentially get more people making masks. And then this strategy is so successful that you end up like, you're like, wow, that was a brilliant idea. I can finally pay off my student loans, and you end up making your own warehouse and crashing the stock market in the process. But what is the moral of the story? How does this relate to our megakaryocytes? This analogy is like original information on how to make masks was your DNA. From the DNA, thing is that your DNA contains all the instructions to make you you, right? So your cells don't like to actually alter your DNA. They like to replicate it, but they like to preserve the original information. So the working copy, so if you have your book, you'd be upset if your friends started to cut out pages from the book or spill coffee on the book, right? So mRNA contains a transcript of the original information from DNA, but now your cells can play around with it a little more. So now they can splice it, they can alter it, and do other things with the mRNA. But even if they're doing other things with the mRNA, your original DNA is still intact. Again, mRNA contains the information to make proteins. So again, you start with your original information, you have your working copies, and your final product. If you want more final product, maybe you should start off with more original copies of the information. So this is why megakaryocytes have all those chromosomes. They have a lot of copies of the original information, so it can make more mRNA and more proteins. So if you have more DNA, more RNA, more proteins, just like you have start from more information, more final product. Okay, so how does this relate to our megakaryocyte? So this is the megakaryocyte, and now it's going next to a blood vessel. So what the megakaryocyte is, kind of sticks its little finger into the bloodstream, and then all of a sudden these little platelets, these branch off and bud off from these little projections, these little fingers of a megakaryocyte. So now they kind of peel off into the bloodstream as from these little what we call proteasomes, or right here. So now we know how to make all the blood cells in your body. They all start off from hematopoietic stem cells. And hematopoietic stem cells, yeah, they can make all three types of formed elements. You have your red blood cells, you have your white blood cells, and you have your platelets. And again, this is why hematopoietic stem cells are very important. If you have a lack of them, well, like say someone, and this is why it's important for things like leukemia and bone marrow transplants, because often the chemotherapy for leukemia kills off these original hematopoietic stem cells along with the cancerous cells. So when they have a hematopoietic stem cells transplant, they receive similar hematopoietic stem cells from someone with similar genetic background, and then when they have the transplanted cells, they can regenerate all the red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets using these newly transplanted hematopoietic stem cells. All right, so that's it for formed elements.